Welcome to the City Manager's Report. The City Manager's Report is your preview of the next Oshkosh Common Council meeting agenda and an update from your Oshkosh City Manager. Your hosts, Emily Makowski of Oshkosh Community Media and City Manager Mark Roloff.
Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us on your City Manager's Report. I'm your host, Emily Makowski, and as always, I'm joined by your City Manager, Mark Roloff. Thanks for joining us today, Mark.
Great to be here, Emily.
And as always, we'll devote the first half of the program to some different topics that are happening currently around Oshkosh, and then we'll dive into the City Council meeting agenda for this Tuesday, February 25th at 6 p.m. Dive into some of those issues that have coming up next week. So let's go ahead and get right into it.
Yeah, we got a lot to talk about.
We always do. And the first thing is really current. Just happened last week, actually. The citizen survey has gone out to different residents in Oshkosh. So what can you tell us about the citizen survey, Mark?
Well, this is a survey that's being done with the UW-Oshkosh Masters in Public Administration program. This is the 6th year that they've been doing this for us. And the idea behind it started out as trying to develop for council priorities for the budget, and it's evolved over time, but it still really serves that purpose, but it goes a little farther than that as well. What it first does is asks the residents to give us their opinion on the importance of certain city services, and then also asks them for the same service areas, how are we doing? What's the quality of service? And with that, you try to gauge based on where we need to improve and what's important. Those are the areas that you tend to focus on. And the first couple of years of the survey, infrastructure was far and away the most important thing, and it really proved itself with the data we were getting, because people said we need to improve in this area, and it was very important. And that's kind of the recipe, looking for those types of things. Mm-hmm. So this survey goes out to 1,600 residents, so you're one of the few selected, but it's important that you get that in there. We really shoot for about 400 responses because that gives us some reliability that this is an accurate survey. And we've usually come pretty close to the 400, but we haven't quite hit it yet. So if you are fortunate enough to get the survey, we ask that you turn it in. But it takes a little time because it's multiple pages, but it really does help us get a good gauge on what's important to the citizens, where they're thinking, and we do need to know what areas we need to improve. So this gives us an idea of where we need to focus our energies.
Yes, and the survey went out in the mail on February 14th, so it should be getting to people at least by now. So how exactly is this survey used? I know in the past months we've been talking a lot about budget, and the citizen survey did come up in those discussions. How is it used besides that?
Well, the citizen survey for budget purposes helped the council a great deal. One of the issues that came up with the last budget was, are we going to do cuts to our fire department? And the survey showed that the quality of the service was rated as outstanding by the residents, and it was very important. So the council felt, based on that data alone, that was something that they didn't want to make cuts to. And that was good for me because they were very difficult cuts, and council had to make some decisions. And there was a portion of the survey that says, if you had an extra $1 million, what would you do with that money? If we had to cut $1 million, where would you cut that? And I think the survey results also guided council on areas that they didn't want to cut. So it does that, but for purposes of us determining how we're doing, getting that quality of service answer is very important to us.
Mm-hmm. And continuously improving, I know, is a huge theme at the city too. One of the many ways that you can get citizen input on that. And I know that there's always an extra question on the survey, a kind of a bonus question. Can you tell us what the question is this year?
This question for 2014 is going to focus a little bit on the undergrounding of utilities. There have been a lot of questions raised in recent years about making the city more aesthetically pleasing by undergrounding utilities, but it does come at a price. And so the question is about the public's interest in undergrounding of utilities, and then broaching the cost subject. So encourage everybody to look at the survey, fill it out, and return it to us so the students really crunch the numbers. There's demographic data they ask about, and they give us a really good idea on what a cross-section of the community feels about different topics, and it really does help us down the road with making some decisions and recommendations to council. So please fill it out if you have a chance.
And I think it's excellent too, like you were just saying, it's also an educational experience for these students. It helps the city, but it also is helping these students too, so that's really interesting.
It is, very much so.
Something else that just happened last night actually, or maybe it might have been the night before that, earlier this week, was the Citizens for a Strong Oshkosh meeting, and you gave a presentation on that. How did that go?
Well, it went very well. Citizens for Strong Oshkosh, it really is interested in educating the public on a variety of topics, and public infrastructure was one of them. So Paulette Feld with the university was the moderator for it, and it was a very snowy night, so fortunately OCMS is rebroadcasting it so people can watch it, but even though it wasn't a huge turnout, a lot of great questions that were raised, but the whole idea is to focus on what our infrastructure needs for the future, especially as it relates to economic development. What's important for infrastructure from an economic development standpoint? And one of the other things that we talked about was getting the public to understand some of the specific needs for economic development, and our industrial parks are what we call shovel ready, which means that we've got all the infrastructure in place so that if somebody wants to develop, it's a very quick process to turn that around, because we've addressed a lot of the environmental issues, we've addressed stormwater management issues, so those types of things don't need to get reviewed as thoroughly because a lot of that legwork's already getting done. So we're real excited about that, and again, real good turnout for a very snowy night, but a lot of insightful questions, and really happy to share that information and things that I know on a day-to-day basis, sharing with the public so they have a better understanding of what's going on in our heads as we're trying to make these decisions about infrastructure.
Right, and I can speak personally too. Just, I mean, what internally it kind of becomes common sense to a lot of people, but for people like me coming into it right now, it's all very new. So it's good to have those kind of meetings to educate the public on things like that.
Yeah, there were things that we talked about, for example, stormwater regulations and why we're different from other communities, and why that's important. And the other thing was the need to plan and coordinate all the utilities, not just the city utilities, but other utilities that are important for economic development, including electric and gas, which are not city utilities, or public utilities, but not ours. And then and how those all coordinated. So I think one of the outcomes of the meeting is that Citizens for Strong Oshkosh realized that they need to talk to some other groups, such as WPS, about what issues related to their utilities are important for the future. So it was a good eye-opening experience for the whole group.
Yes, and another great thing that's happening here in Oshkosh is the museum is making continuous improvements, as always. They just finally adopted, or formally adopted, I should say, their strategic plan, and this has kind of been a process coming up to this.
The museum is very interested in, of course, getting more interest from the public in general. Attendance, of course, that's the ultimate goal, but also finding out, making something relevant. So the strategic plan, typically you have priority goals with that, and the museum developed 4 of them. One is strengthening the brand as something to let people understand exactly what distinguishes a museum from other museums, so people understand this is what the public museum does. Developing partnerships, and again, that's identifying people that can help promote and support, and also how ways in which the museum can help other community partners thrive as well. So it's working together on those things. Providing exhibits, events, and programming that are relevant to the public. That's really important, because it's got to be relevant if the public's going to support it. So the word missing there is relevant, and that's probably as important as anything. And the museum certainly recognizes that. And then, of course, improving and maintaining the facilities. This is a 100-year-old building, and it's gone through a lot of changes. They've gone through fires, storms, etc. And we have to improve and maintain the buildings to make it an enjoyable experience for people, that people feel that when they're going there, it's a valuable amount of time spent on their part to go to the museum. So the museum board gets a lot of kudos for really thinking about this, and very forward thinking about what they want the museum to be in the future.
And looking at those priority goals, I mean, it really kind of meshes very nicely with the city's strategic plan.
Oh, very much so, because in maintaining our quality of life assets, it's something that's in our strategic plan, and also maintaining facilities. So they really do blend in well. But quality of life is something that when we're looking at attracting people to the community, they're looking for little things. That doesn't mean they're going to go to the museum every day, but it does mean that they're looking for those types of cultural amenities that make this a nice place to live, a nice place to brag about to other friends and relatives, so they can show these things off. And then also it's a good way to link our current situation to the past, and that's a huge part of what the museum does.
Yes, and it definitely goes hand in hand with the, like we were saying, the city's strategic plan. Moving on, the city just received a grant from WEDC for the Brownsfield cleanup. Now, I don't know too much about this. If you want to maybe give us a little background about this, it has to do with site assessment.
Sure. Well, first off, WEDC is the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation. They're the state's private agency that deals with economic development, and they maintain or have these brownfield cleanup grants. Brownfields are sites that are typically old developed sites that have some environmental contamination, or at least a concern about environmental contamination. And the site we're talking about here is the Geldwin site. And you've already seen a lot of the buildings start to get torn down, but underneath that area there are some concerns about some old underground tanks and some other things that may have been there from 100 years ago. So the site assessment grant is intended to do exactly what it says: assess the environmental impacts that some prior developments have had on that site, identify the extent that any contamination may exist, and then identify what needs to get done to get that back into a developable site. So the new owners of the site are being very proactive. We've been working closely with them to apply for this grant. It'll be used for this site and this site alone, and we don't know exactly what needs to get done yet, but we know that there is a history there, so now it's just examining how extensive any environmental cleanup may be necessary.
Determining what needs to be done is
right, because we really don't know everything yet. We've got an idea, a little bit of it, but a lot of it's just based on just historical understanding, a lot of anecdotal evidence. We really need some more solid evidence, and the purpose of the site assessment is to get underground and take a look at it and see what's all there before we move on.
Yes, and this is actually set to be happening pretty soon, time-wise.
Yeah, absolutely. The whole idea is to get an idea of how extensive this damage might be, because if it's extensive, which we hope not, then they're going to have to spend a great deal more time cleaning it up. But in any event, they need to, as they're looking to develop this site, they have to have some certainty about what's out there. So they'll get an idea. There are things they can do to address these issues, but until they know the extent of it, they're careful. And I'm really proud of this group, because they took some risks in acquiring this site without necessarily having all that information. So it is a bit of a gamble on their part, but hopefully it'll pay off, that the extent of the damage isn't that significant, and they'll be able to develop that site in the future, and that's what we're hoping for.
Yes, and I know we have talked about this in weeks past, and it'll be interesting to see what comes of this too, as it continues to develop. Like you said, it's not nearly a finished product quite
No,
yet.
and we don't know exactly what they're going to do with the site, but a lot of it's going to depend on how extensive this damage might be. Once that's done, I think then you'll see them starting to put together some specific plans about what types of buildings, what types of land uses that'll be compatible with the area. I'm excited to see the results.
Yes, and so it looks like that rounds out the topics for our first half of the program here. So now it's that time of the show where viewers are able to ask their city manager anything they want, and he'll answer them right here on the show. So let's take a look and see what the question is this week. All right, Mark, so the question this week is, what can I do to prevent frozen water service laterals? And this is a very timely question.
Oh, we've gotten a bunch of them. I mean, we were going to do this as a segment of the show, and then the questions started to come in. We've gotten a lot of questions on this topic in general, and the main thing to do is to run your water on a fairly regular basis. What we're recommending is that you run it for about 5 minutes at a time, 3 times a day. And the whole idea behind that is to get the water exercised so that the water gets through your pipes. And if you're lateral, which is the area that goes from the water main out on the street into your property, if that water's not moving in there, the potential for it to freeze increases a great deal. So there are a lot of questions. Well, how do I know if I have a frozen water pipe? Well, if you turn on the water and it's not coming out, that's a good clue. But there are other things. Unusually cold is one of the issues that you look for. But quite honestly, it's cold already. So if you get unusually low water flow, you know how your water runs. You pull on full blast. If it's not coming out like you're used to, you probably got a problem. If it's discolored at this time of the year, that shouldn't be the case. Low water pressure. If your pipes, even your fixture itself, seems to be extremely cold, colder than usual. So those are the things. Or sputtering. Sputtering is usually a point where you don't have water pressure. So those are the things you can do. So what you can do to prevent it is run it, and you don't have to you don't have to waste water to do it.
Right. That was going to be my next question. Do we have to go stand at our sinks and turn it on and wait for 5 minutes, every single time?
Yeah, I don't think you necessarily need to, but it depends on your individual situation. If you're a family that has somebody taking a shower in the evening and another person taking a shower in the morning, you've really got 2 of those times covered. Some people will run their laundry. They'll go home at lunch, turn on the laundry, or they'll set a timer for, say, the dishwasher, or a timer. I don't have a timer, but you have a timer on your washer. You can do things like that. There's things you can do to generally keep your water running. If you're going to be using your water with more than 12-hour interim, I'd suggest that you ask a neighbor, or even at worst case, leave what's called a pencil-thin stream running, and go to the highest area, go to the highest floor in your house. So if you have 2 stories, do it on the 2nd floor. Just run a pencil-thin stream of water. It is a little wasteful, but the downside is that if you don't do it, you get a frozen lateral, and you could find yourself paying a significant amount of money to get it done. So we don't want that. We don't want you to incur that cost. We really want you to have that. So the little bit of water that you might waste for a short amount of time will be more than made up with considerate insurance to prevent frozen pipes.
And I know that you were saying too, a lot of people that go away on vacation should probably have someone, a friend or a neighbor, stop by and run their water too.
Absolutely, you can't take that chance. I can tell you that I know somebody who went away just for the weekend and had that problem. And some of the older areas of town, it may be a little more susceptible to it. But if you know that your neighbors have had a frozen water lateral, you're probably more susceptible to it than others. So be on the lookout, and we've got some information on our website. Take a look at that information. Call our water department and ask questions if you're concerned about anything. Don't worry about it. Call us. We'll help take care of you.
Great question for this crazy weather that we've been having.
Oh yeah.
So if you'd like to send a question for Question Mark, you can simply email it to questionmark@ci.oshkosh.wi.us. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to dive right into the council agenda for this Tuesday, February 25th. We'll be right back on your City Manager's Report.
Hi, I'm Mayor Bergtauer, and I'm asking for your help. The city has several boards and commissions that play important roles in just about every aspect of local government. Whether it's the Parks Board or the Landmarks Commission, these and other boards act as a forum for citizens to address their concerns and questions about Oshkosh city government. The boards also provide members the opportunity to make positive suggestions to the council or city staff to move the city forward. So here's where we need your help. For our city to work effectively, we need active citizen participation. Many of our boards and commissions currently need members. We're asking for just a few hours of your time each month to serve on one of our boards or commissions and help to ensure a strong democratic process. So please consider serving on a city board or commission. For an application, visit the city website, stop by the city manager's office in City Hall, or call 236-5000. Thank you for your interest, and we look forward to your possible involvement.
Welcome back to your City Manager's Report. As always, I'm joined by your City Manager, Mark Roloff, and now we are going to go right into the Oshkosh Common Council meeting agenda for February 25th at 6 p.m. So first up that we wanted to talk about is a resolution for some local street concrete paving program for the Central City area. Now, this is relating to the big project that just recently happened here at City Hall, yes?
Yeah, this is the next phase, really, of what's called the Division Street watershed. We did the pond at the underground pond at City Hall last year. Probably a faded memory to a lot of people, but the next step in this is to increase the size of the storm sewer in the residential area immediately north of City Hall. The purpose of Tuesday's agenda item is really the initial resolution for special assessments. Now that's sort of the bad news because that's the bill that we send to the residents. This project, because it's so extensive, it really goes beyond just the residents. So the special assessments are relatively small compared to the whole project, but there is a portion of it that is special assessed for the residential area. The residents have been giving us a lot of input on things they would like to see in that residential area. They're very active in that. It's exciting. But this is the start of the process. This is our second big street project that we're going to be doing in 2014.
It's kind of phase 2 there then.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so moving on, item number 8, which actually directly relates to item number 12, having to do with the Public Works contract to Relco for the National Guard Armory area stormwater detention basin. Now, one has to do a little bit more with engineering services, correct? That's number 8 here.
That's number 8.
So how was the bid for that?
Well, the project, the bids came in very good. We were estimating between $3 and $4 million for the construction portion of this project. This is over at the National Guard Armory, over just behind where the Best Buy store is. It's at the Wisconsin National Guard Armory right there off of Osborne. But this area, as you can see from the map, it's immediately east of where the Best Buy store is, the old Menard store, as I like to say. But this is in Campbell Creek. This is another one of our bigger watersheds, and this area is really necessary to stormwater quality is a huge part of that, and you can see the way the map's drawn there, that there are different basins within there to handle the stormwater quality. But the area immediately to the north, Huntington Downs, experienced a great deal of flooding with the 2008 storms, and this will help prevent some of that. It'll minimize the impact of the water rushing into that area from the commercial and residential and industrial areas to the south and to the west of Highway 41. It'll slow the water down in this pond and then slow the water going into the residential area. So we're real excited about this, and the bids were under $2.8 million, so it's a really good competitive bid, and we're excited to begin work on that this spring.
Yes, especially something like you said that has experienced such bad flooding. It's definitely necessary.
Exactly.
Moving on to item number 11 here, having to do for PTS contractors for various concrete paving and utility projects on Bowen Street. And this is the other big street project, yes?
Correct, and the bids also came in pretty good for this, not as good as the Armory, but about $3.3 million. It's probably a little high for the water, but a little low on the storm sewer. I think that's what the numbers the engineers were giving us. But this project is going to be on Bowen Street, further around New York, Murdoch, that type of area. We're also doing a lot of sanitary sewer there. We're going to be replacing the sanitary sewer that's quite undersized, so we're going to get it a little bigger and help build capacity and get rid of a sewer lift station down the road. So we're excited that we're able to get a lot of work done and get a lot of value for the work we're doing out there.
Definitely a lot of big projects coming up here we can see. Going on to the next one, number 17, a partial bid to Lunda Construction for the Boatworks Riverwalk, that east section. And this says partial bid, so what exactly does that mean?
What it means is that we're going to do the whole project eventually, but the project that we're awarding the bid on right now is there's that island that's on the south side of the river. This is just east of Michigan Avenue extension, but that island is where the bridge will go. The bridge will go from one side to the west or left on the screen, over to the island itself, and then over to the other side, and then eventually tying in with the Geldman property that we talked about. But this is just for the bridge portion. We were informed that we might be eligible for a grant to do some other work immediately to the west of here. You kind of see that white area there, that we might be able to put some other amenities in there, such as a restroom and some other park-like amenities. So until we know if we can get that grant, we're holding off doing the entire bid award because it's that area that we would get the grant. If we get the grant, we'll come back and we'll actually be able to add potentially a restroom and a playground area. If we don't get the grant, then we're just going to do the trail and just move on. But we think we can maximize the grant dollars and minimize the local tax dollars if we do it this way. So we're excited to get another extension of the Riverwalk on the south side now. So we're real happy that we're able to move that forward.
And this will be really cool with the bridge and everything. I know a lot of people are probably looking forward to this. And like you said, the additional facilities will hopefully be yet to come.
Yes, absolutely.
We're going to breeze over some special events, a lot of them on this agenda, and one of them is item number 32, having the Oshkosh Gus Macker 3-on-3 basketball tournament. So the date has been changed on this, and I know that's one thing you wanted to get out there.
That's really the big thing. It's previously been held in June, about the same time as Irish Fest. We thought there'd be some great cross-promotion, but actually there's a lot going on that weekend, and we thought it was good to move it. And we were limited in how we can move it because there are some regulations about how that tournament's run. So we're going to be moving it to August 23rd, 22nd, 23rd, and 24th, so later in the summer, but it'll still be a great tournament. I think we'll probably get more people coming to it because they won't be in competition with some other special events going on in the city.
There's more information to come on that. You'll see that being promoted like crazy, so something to keep an eye out for. Item number 36 and 37, we've talked about this in past CMRs here, the final reading of the ordinance for the design standards, one for single and two family structures and one is a traditional neighborhood overlay. Yeah,
these were discussed at the last council meeting, and I think the council was listening to some of the recommendations from the Plan Commission. The first one, item 36, the design standards for single and two-family structure, that's also known as universal design standards. They'll apply to everybody regardless of where you live in the city. And there's some questions about some of those issues there, but it's pretty straightforward. The other one has to do with traditional neighborhood design and overlay district, which would be a specific area identified. And there are questions about what would trigger some changes for requiring a site plan review for these areas, and also some issues about side yards, side facades, would they get, when that would trigger. Plan Commission thinks it should be triggered much earlier, so the council is going to have to address those two issues. Are we going to do side facades, and to what extent these changes will trigger a review or permit? So it'll be an interesting discussion, but we're getting close.
Yes, and the last one, we're going to take a few seconds for this, having to do with Oshkosh Sawdust Days to be approved. One of the issues was, have they paid their bills? Have they paid them? Their bills are all paid up from 2013, so that's not an issue anymore. Excellent. So it looks like that's actually going to wrap up our time here. We really filled it up quick here. So again, the City Council meeting is this Tuesday, February 25th at 6 p.m. You can watch it live on City Cable 10 or on our website, oshkoshcommunitymedia.org. You can also listen to it on 101.9 WOCT, which is now online, and the TuneIn Radio app for mobile devices. Make sure to like us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter for all of your community and government programming and updates, or you can check out our YouTube channel for government meeting replays and past episodes of your favorite programs. Again, if you do have a question for City Manager Mark Roloff, you can email that to questionmark@ci.oshkosh.wi.us. Thanks again for joining us on your City Managers Report, and we'll see you next time.